Welcome to the Licensing and Hearing Committee meeting of August 28, 2024. Please ensure that you are on your license and hearing meetings in e-scribes. Otherwise, your request to speak or voting functions will not work. All votes will be recorded, so you will need to ensure you are voting via e-scribes. Clerks will be ensuring every vote has been recorded before we move on to the next item. I'd now like to call the meeting to order. And I will now have the clerk do the roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair Foxton. Regional Chair Redmond.
Present.
Chair Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Hunink.
Present.
Councillor Nowak. And Councillor Erb will be joining us shortly. Thank you, Chair.
I would now like to do the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Shinaten people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. But these are just words unless we live them. I had the privilege of coming across a situation in my corner of the world where we found out that the first Indigenous hockey player actually came from our area. And so we approached the NHL and the New York Rangers, and they had confirmed it, that he had. He had been in hiding. His family had hid him until he was 16 so that he wouldn't have to go to the residential schools. So we had the New York Rangers send us up 2 jerseys. And I invited Chief Ava Hill to our complex to receive one of the Buddy Miracle jerseys. And as she stood there at Senate Heights, she said, "This is what reconciliation is. It is respect and acknowledgement for our achievements." And I thought that's a life lesson for all of us. And as I relayed this story to my council last couple weeks ago, I stated, in Canada, we respect one another first. You have to lose respect here. A lot of places you have to earn it. But in Canada, we respect you first. And as you enter this chamber, I hope you will respect one another. Are there any declaration of peculiar interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none, I would now like to turn the mic over to Rod McGeer.
Thank you, Chair Foxton. So today we have an agenda that includes 3 woodland removal permits for consideration. The first application is submitted by Conestoga Meats. The woodland is located between 313 Menno Street and 1755 Lonsdale Road in Breslau. Staff have presented 2 options for the committee to consider. The report structure allows council to consider both the economic and environmental impacts of the application. The second application is for a small conifer plantation located at 3413 Herbs Road West in Wilmot. Staff are recommending approval. The third application is for another small conifer plantation located at 51 Moorfield Road in Cambridge, and staff are also recommending approval for that application. And we are here to take questions.
Thank you, Rod. Delegations. We will now proceed with the delegations as listed on the agenda. I'd like to remind all delegations of this guidelines for participation. For those who are joining us in person, please proceed to the podium when you're called upon to speak. Please press a button on the base of the microphone to turn it on. If the light is green, the microphone's on. For those who are joining us electronically, please leave your video, camera turned off and your microphone audio muted until you are called upon to speak. You will have 5 minutes. Anyone who registered after the deadline will receive 3 minutes. Interrupting councillors, staff, and/or delegations, derogatory remarks, statements about councillors, staff, or others, turning your camera on or off at inappropriate times, and hate speech or defamatory comments are not allowed. One last reminder for delegations, please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is a council's time to really listen and reflect upon the options and ideas and opinions shared with us from our community members. So I'd like to call the first delegate, which is Inga Ryan, that chairs Trees for Woolwich. Welcome, Inga. You have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen. As she said, my name is Inga Rinne. I have spent 20 years as a volunteer working on tree planting and reforestation projects. So I've seen success stories, and I have tried to learn from, shall we say, some of our less successful projects. In making a decision on this application, in weighing the costs and the benefits, please keep in mind that the cost here is high. The proposal is to destroy 35 acres of high-quality hardwood bush, predominantly sugar maple, regionally designated as a significant woodland, including 3 small wetlands. This is not some ragtag, degraded conifer plantation that is nearing the end of its life in any event. This is the best that the region has to offer. It shelters 332 vascular plant species, 56 bird species, assorted animals, including the bats and snakes that nobody really. If you look at Table 5 in the Terrace Story report, it gives you a summary of those significant features. Presently, this woodland sequesters about 14,000 tons of carbon annually, representing 0.25% of the region's annual carbon emissions, which you are working so hard to reduce. When I asked the regional forester, regrettably now retired Albert Hoving, about a precedent where we could take some lessons from a previous application of this kind, he said there were none. This application is unique. Recognize that this proposal is destroying not just trees, but a functioning ecosystem. And the proposal is to compensate for that, needs to result in a no net loss situation. The point is that there's a lot to compensate for. You would be taking down a functioning ecosystem and hoping that you might have something new and as good in place 20 to 30 years from now. So the first reaction is surely there is a better way to do this. The company owns 400 acres of land, and surely a site can be created that would balance the ecological cost with the needs of the company. The site that you have seen in your material, I have been assured by Mr. Drong, is a very preliminary proposal, and it's no doubt the easiest and most efficient. But surely we can do better. So point 1 is, given the high loss here, look very carefully and very thoroughly at other options to site the plant and its ancillary facilities. The application speaks of, by way of compensation, with about 1 acre plots on co-op farmlands. There has been no amendment to that application, but I understand that the present proposal on the table is 112 acres of reforestation on site. The present configuration, however, provides no interior woodland habitat, which is crucial. Secondly, if and only if you decide that destruction is the only option, then the stakes are high and steps need to be taken to mitigate the risk of failure. I would strongly urge, in addition to the conditions set out in Mr. Hoving's report at Appendix B, of his report, that's page 33 of my package. If you look at the report from Terra Story called Woodland Compensation Framework, Appendix 2 on their report, page 105, makes it clear that to achieve the goal of real compensation, this is a long-term project. Quotes, planted woodlands require decades at a minimum to establish, attain closed canopy conditions, and achieve equivalent level of ecological function to the woodlands being replaced.
You're under your final minute. You have 48 seconds.
I'm sorry, I missed
You
that.
have 40 seconds.
So it's a long-term project. Memories are short, corporations change. There needs to be a very substantial sum of money set aside by way of a performance bond or a trust fund to ensure that this happens over the next 20 years. My message is tread carefully. There is much at stake here.
Thank you.
I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors?
Yes.
Councillor Hunick, go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for your excellent delegation and especially bringing to our attention the need for planning between various companies and various political administrations. We hear you and we appreciate it. I'm just wondering if you have any knowledge of something similar to what you're proposing being carried out in other municipalities or other circumstances such as this.
I must admit, I haven't found it yet.
Okay.
I turned first to our regional forester, who had nothing for me.
Okay.
So now we have to look farther afield as for some sort of precedent.
Well, I like it when Waterloo Region is the first and the best, so we'll aim for that.
Councillor Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair Foxton. Inga, my question was similar to Councillor Hunick's, and that's the performance bond. Have you turned your thoughts as to who would manage that? Is that something you would see under the auspices of the region or arm's length body at this point in time?
I think it needs. It might be best at the region. It needs to be independent of. And I cast no aspersions on Conestoga Meats, but 20 years is a long time. It needs to be safe from things like insolvency and corporate changes and that sort of thing. So it would require, and probably have to do a little bit more research on exactly how you structure that. I would expect that performance bond would be a declining thing. You know, most of the cost is in the first number of years. There are ongoing costs as time goes on, but those are diminishing, and so you could do a declining thing. There isn't a sort of a hard dead end.
In addition to some of the vagaries of private industry, we have elections every 4 years too. So I think this makes a whole lot of sense that we look at something longitudinal. I really appreciate not only your caution, but the fact you come with some remedies, because I think this is a really important project. So thank you very much for coming and being so thoughtful.
Thank you.
Councillor Nowak.
Yeah, just a question. I'm not sure you'll have the answer, but we'll give it a try. To replicate what will be destroyed, what's your best estimate on how long that would take? If it at all is possible.
Realistically, you're looking at after 20 years, it's not going to be the same as what you've got now, but you will have, if you've properly managed the project, you will have a forest and hopefully a functioning ecosystem as opposed to a bunch of little trees and shrubs that you planted.
Yeah.
So that would be sort of the minimum timeline.
And the management of these, we're going to be dealing with a couple other applications later that are forests that weren't properly managed. And they will, I'm not sure what the committee will decide on them, but what's involved in managing? I mean, who's going to oversee this? I mean, it's.
My suggestion would be that it would need to be professionally managed. You have a contract with a company, with a reforestation company that does this sort of thing, with some, fairly precise outlines, and frankly, a pretty substantial budget.
Yes. So it wouldn't be the regional budget, though.
I would expect not.
I would hope not. Okay.
I know how hard it is to get money out of this region.
I see no more speakers, so thank you very much for taking the time, Inga.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Next up, we have Greg Lynch, Construction Manager, Conestoga Meats, and Arnold Drung, President, Bill Peters, Chairman of the Board of Directors, and Brenda Flewelling, Planner, GSP Group.
Thanks, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, I'm going to speak collectively for that group.
Thank you for that.
You've got our presentation up on the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Thank you for the work of the committee and of staff with respect to the report that was put together. And obviously, we're hoping for the approval of option one. I'm just going to make some supplementary comments to the application, just as a reminder of what we're doing here. And just at the outset, I'd like to say that we have not come to make this request lightly. This is a project that we've been working on for 7 years, and we have looked at many options, many different options before we came to the one that we're at. Could I get the next slide, please? Just the agenda that we're going to cover. Just a bit of background again for those who aren't familiar. Conestoga Meats is located in Breslau. There's been an on-farm meat business here since the 1950s. Since 2001, the business has actually been owned by a cooperative of farmers from southwestern Ontario. We have 156 land-based family farms who own the business, and they practice sustainable agriculture. If you've got a lot more time, I can share with you why Canadian pork production is actually the most sustainable in the world, and our farmers are long-term stewards of the land. So 20 years when in the life of a farm is not very long, and so we think of it from that long-term perspective. Our closest farmer is actually located 3 kilometers from the Breslau plant, and he prides himself in having replanted a lot of his land about 30 years ago and has a very nice woodlot there now. In total, our farmers farm about 100,000 acres, and they also steward about 7,000 acres of woodland. In terms of the business itself, we have about 1,400 team members, and we're the largest hog processor now in Ontario. Next, please. So why are we going ahead with this? Our current facility is reaching the end of its life. We've done many expansions over the last 20 plus years, but we've basically exhausted our building, and we don't have room for growth at the corner of Lonsdale and Menno. So our plan is to build on greenfield adjacent to the existing property, land that we purchased a couple of years ago. And this plan has a number of facets to it, but it's going to be a significant capital project driving economic growth in the east side lands, which have long been designated for industrial growth in the region. We're looking for a project that's long-term sustainable, that it's flexible, that it works for our employees and team members, and that we can utilize advanced manufacturing to be the best of the best in the world. We have been seeking provincial, regional, municipal support and have generally had a positive response, and we're looking at a significant increase in employment. Next, please. The application was submitted on July 12th. We've added a few things to that. I want to be clear that we are already working with the Ministry of the Environment and the requisite parties. We understand what this project entails, and that it is, in some ways, maybe we're breaking new ground, but we're committed to doing it properly. As I said, our farmer owners are long-term stewards of the land, and the Conestoga operation is really an extension of their farms. And they look at these things from a multi-decade perspective. Just moving on to the site plan. This is, again, very, very rough. The unfortunate thing with our property is it's, as you can see, it's a very odd shape. And in order to be able to site the facility properly, to meet all of the requirements of the planning process, and to make it work for the long haul, it goes basically where the current woods are. But if you look at the dark green on that site plan, I mean, that's our compensation area. One of the things that has been challenging for us is that we have the Randall Drain going through part of the property, and we think that there's opportunity to enhance that feature, actually, which will make it of greater benefit longer term. Next slide. As I mentioned previously, this is a first of a multi-step process in developing the complete compensation and remedial plan. We are proposing significant additional acreage for the proposed moved woodlot. And really what we're asking for here in terms of option one, that this be part of a more fulsome plan for the property. So we're not asking to be able to go out and fire up the chainsaw tomorrow. I mean, this is going to be part of a much more fulsome plan, which will have planning implications and industrial implications. And so this is really step one in all of that. One of the things, too, that we would ask is that Typically, these permits are for 1 year because of the length or the size of our project that and the complexity of it, that we would be looking at a 3-year time horizon for that. So we would have to act within that time period. So that's what I wanted to cover off. I think the balance is in the application. Be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you. Are there, Councillor Hunick, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question of clarification. After reading your report, I understood that this was going to be a secondary facility or facility in addition to the one that you currently have. Right. But you also said in your delegation that the facility is reaching the end of its life. And so are you planning to keep that functional, or how is that going to work?
Very good question. We're looking at repurposing it, and we have a number of potential options for that. And that will come forward too in the fullness of time, but it will be maintained as a facility as well.
Okay, and you did mention a number of environmental sustainability aspects in the plan, which I think is good. Could you speak a little bit to how you would maintain continuity of that, knowing that, management changes and so on and so forth, and political administration changes?
Sure. I think that's a very good point, a very good question, and I think it comes back to who our owners are. I mean, we're an extension of the farm for our members. Mm-hmm. We're part of that value chain, and with the type of investment that we're contemplating here, this is not a 5-year, 10-year project. I mean, we're looking at a minimum 50-year facility. And so we think that, by the time significant renovations have to happen to that facility, there will be a very nice woodlot all around it, and we'll just be looking at interior renovations to the plant. But we take a very long-term perspective on this.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Nowak.
So I have maybe a bit of a preamble to a question. What I didn't notice in the report, your consultant's report, was how old this woodlot is. It might have been there and I might have missed it, but any idea? And the reason I'll tell you why I was asking that question. I'm not an expert on these issues, but I have done a bit of research. And that suggests that a 50-year-old forest will absorb about 8 metric tons of carbon per acre per year. A 65-year-old forest will absorb about 1.6 metric tons per year. These forests have carbon stocks of approximately 33 metric tons per acre, and as mentioned, sequester about 8 tons of carbon per acre per year. Carbon stock is the amount of carbon that has been sequestered from the atmosphere and is now stored within the forest ecosystem, mainly with living biomass and soil, and to a lesser extent also dead wood and litter. So conserving these forests plays a critical role in mitigating climate change, and as they absorb store huge volumes of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Now, you did an environmental assessment on that property, but I didn't see, as quickly as I read it, any reference to what we're losing as far as carbon sequestered in there.
It's a good question. I don't have that off the top. I think that's part of the work that will be done now as we go forward with particularly the Ministry of the Environment. And I think there are, even the location of our plant and what we're proposing here, in terms of the additional livestock that we'll be processing that would either be going to the United States or Manitoba, we can probably do some pretty good calculations on the transportation, on CO2 generated through transportation relative to bringing it to a local facility and then adding that all together.
Yeah, I think it would be an interesting study, but I would have preferred to see it in the environmental assessment because I think that's pretty critical to what you're trying to accomplish there. The other question I have, you've got close to 400 acres there.
We do, yeah.
So there's no other place you can put this new facility. Putting the facility where you're planning to put, according to the draft now, is going to make it more efficient, more streamlined, my understanding. Is there another place you could put it that would maybe be a little less streamlined without cutting the forest down? It might be a little bit more costly to maintain over a period of time, but at least you would save the forest. Is there no other option whatsoever?
Well, as I said, we've spent 7 years at it, and I mean, we're trying to build a facility here that is going to be functional and efficient for the next 50 years. So we played with many different options, and it came down to this is the one that works the best. Also, with respect to transportation and trucks in, trucks out, employment flow, all that sort of thing, right? So it's not just the configuration of the plant. There's many other things that go with it. And as I said, this is step one. And as part of the planning work, we're going to have to identify and work through all of those things as well. But the preliminary work that we did said, you know, we want to move, make sure the traffic is flowing towards Meadow Street, because that's going to be kind of the main artery there. We want to shield from the airport as best as we can. And so these are all the considerations that have been part of this.
So, but physically, could it be put in another spot on your property? And maybe a little bit less efficient, but could it be put in another?
We end up being too skinny on part of the land, and you know we don't own. I mean, we've got what we've got to work with, right? The other thing in our environment, from a food processing perspective, we have to have a certain amount of boundary. Even so, for when we replant the trees, there's got to be a certain amount of space between that and the facility itself. And obviously, you've got truck traffic and all those things that go around it too. So it's not just the building itself; it's everything else that goes with it.
Okay, that's good for now.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair Foxton. I did have a response to the question of longevity in the compensation plan that was raised both by the first delegation as well as Councillor Hunick. I'll draw your attention to Appendix B in the report, which identifies the recommended conditions of approval of the woodland removal permit for the project. And the last condition, number 6, identifies the need for a conservation easement to be placed on lands that are proposed for reforestation. And that's a legal tool that allows for the long-term protection of those lands as they evolve into fully functional woodlot.
Thank you, Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair Fox, and thank you very much for coming in. Obviously, from your answers, Arnold, you've given this a lot of thought, and so has Conestoga Meats. This is somewhat different. This is the largest request for taking down a woodlot that I've seen in licensing and hearings, so you can appreciate the fact we've got lots of questions. I, too, was going to look at Appendix B and say, it sounds to me like you're already agreeing to some preconditions, and I'm assuming that the easement would then be in perpetuity? Yes. Rodriguez is nodding his head to that. I don't know that a performance bond is necessary, but clearly you've looked at the way forward and how you ensure that the integrity of the replacement of this woodlot. And I don't know if you want to speak to it or if it's just outlined in Appendix B, but it does seem to me that there is a real commitment on your part.
Yes, yeah, very much so. I mean, we've said that we want to do the right thing. We're a long-term resident of Woolwich region, or Woolwich Township and Waterloo region, and I think we have a good track record of being a good corporate citizen, and we want to do the right thing here. We recognize that we're asking for something big here. We wouldn't be asking it, though, if we weren't looking at building something that is going to create a lot of jobs for the region. I mean, it's going to help us as we continue to increase in population. We need good paying jobs in the region. We're going to add those. The construction work in and of itself is going to be, generate significant number of jobs and economic activity. And we're also supporting agriculture. I mean, we've got some of our members in the region here, but we're an extension of the farm, and that is the largest segment in the region. So.
And this probably just is an indication of my ignorance of this process. I can't, I think you said you're not going to fire up your chainsaws right away.
Yes.
Would this be phased, or would it have to all be taken out before you could start the building that's necessary for the expansion?
Well, I think the way it's structured is that we would actually start to build the replacement before anything comes down. So we can do that in advance. And we'll have to see. I mean, the planning process for this is lengthy. And it's detailed and complicated, and it will all be part of it. But I mean, we're committed to working with the appropriate parties to get it done in the right way. And, you know, if there's anything that can be saved, we will save it. I mean, I personally, I've thrown out to our team, like, can we get one of these big tree spades in and start moving some stuff around and try and use what we've got? So we'll see. I mean, when you get into the interior of the forest, lots of saplings and that sort of thing. So can we actually use what's there as well? So I think there's lots of opportunity to do this in the right way and you know, get lots of input.
Thank you.
Councillor Shantz.
Thank you, and thanks for your presentation, Arnold. When we first talked about this project, I know you and I talked about the woodlot, and you were very adamant that you want to do the right thing and make sure that the work is put in to recreate space. When I was there was a number of reports in here, and I just want to clarify something on that. In the one report, it said 3-to-1, so you were going to replant, I think, over 100 acres versus the 35 on site. Is that
That's
correct?
on site, yeah. As was mentioned, I mean, we have a 400-acre property, so the current site takes up 40, 50 acres or so, but we've got the room, and we think for the long term, it's the right way to do it, to actually do the extra as well. So, yeah, I mean, I love trees myself, so I'm not, you know, again, coming here lightly saying, let's fire up the chainsaw, right? I mean, I'd like to save, you know, what we can, but I think, you know, I look at my own property, I've got 3 oak trees that I planted 25 years ago, and, you know, I look at those now and I think, wow, I can't believe what's happened in 25 years. So I have hope that we're going to see something very good here within our lifetime.
The other piece that was in a different report was that some or all of your 156 members have committed to planting some trees. That's over and above that.
That was an idea that we put out there.
Okay.
But I mean, the reality is that we need to do it on site. Simple as that. And I mean, our farmers, you know, they take this thing seriously as well. So there is opportunity for them to do that. But, you know, as we talk about the compensation plan, you know, maybe we'll get creative on a few extras. Let's put it that way.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, and thank you for being one of our major employers in the township. I think you said 1,400, and you're expecting that to increase to?
Well, we're thinking we've been in the range of 2,000. From less than 100 in 2004. So,
and representing 156 of our farmers. So, thank you.
thank you.
No further questions, then thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we will have Ian McLean, President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. You have 5 minutes, Ian.
Good afternoon. And since I only have 5 minutes, I'll talk fast if you listen fast. Just kidding. Thank you, Chair Foxton, for the opportunity to address Region of Waterloo Licensing and Hearings Committee this afternoon. I'm Ian McLean, President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce, and speaking in support of the woodlot application from Conestoga Meats. Conestoga Meats is an expanding and innovative employer located in the region of Waterloo that serves pork producers from across Ontario. They've grown from a relatively small farmer-owned cooperative to the largest hog processor in the province, from 100 employees in 2002 to over 1,400 employees today. And it is important to note that it is a farmer-owned co-op, which Arnold has just identified. Conestoga Meats remained operational and provided essential food processing services for local, national, and international customers during COVID-19. They always have been a highly respected and reliable employer that has helped build our community. To continue their economic growth, which has significantly benefited all residents of Waterloo Region, the company is seeking approval from Regional Council for an expansion proposal for which our chamber supports. As their submission notes, Conestoga's current facility is reaching the end of its life, and due to continual expansion with no existing capacity for growth. Conestoga Meats is working on the plan for a brand new plant on this property and has already expressed its willingness to continue in negotiations and discussions with the community. Organizations, including the Canadian Manufacturers Exporters and other analysts in government and business, have noted that continual investment in new technology and innovation are critical for elevating domestic productivity levels and particularly in manufacturing and food processing. This new plant will be over 900,000 square feet and world-class in its orientation with innovation and technology to remain a global leader. The domestic meat industry is the largest component of Canada's food processing sector, with annual sales of over $35 billion in 2021. And certainly with over 48,000 people employed nationwide, and a good chunk of them here, right here in Breslau. Agriculture, I always point this out, agriculture and food processing are the #1 employer in the region of Waterloo and the #1 part of our business sector in the region of Waterloo. And so to stay competitive, investment and change are essential and required, but respectfully, sustainably, and community-minded in orientation. And Conestoga Meats has always done that in its business endeavors. With respect to the woodlot, the size of the new facility and requirements of siting it mean that the woodlot will have to be moved, but Conestoga Meats is proposing a compensation plan of 3 times the amount of woodlot that will have to be taken down. The permit doesn't mean the immediate removal of the woodlot, only that it can occur once a fully developed plan for the new facility is approved by local planning authorities. So we're asking the committee to support option 1 as set out by regional staff. As far as project benefits, over hundreds of millions of dollars in construction costs, labor, material, hundreds of new good-paying jobs, which will ensure that Conestoga Meats is an anchor employer for years to come. And providing the jobs for our Vision 1 million. We're going to be 1 million people. We need to have good-paying jobs for folks. We'll remain globally competitive and a major exporter. The enhanced environmental features for the long term, going above and beyond what's required to meet both community expectations and their own environmental and sustainability requirements. So support of agriculture and food processing in the region and the largest business sector is critical in our view. In short, Conestoga Meats has presented a responsible and comprehensive expansion plan that recognizes the importance of the pork industry to the local economy, along with the sustainable environmental practices that will preserve the industry for future generations. Their approach is both consistent with economic and environmental objectives of the region of Waterloo. So our chamber wholeheartedly supports Conestoga Meats and this plan, and we respectfully ask for council's endorsement. Thanks very much for your consideration. Happy to answer any questions.
Well done, Ian, and I don't see any questions, so thank you very much for your delegation.
That was only 4 minutes. I just want to point that out.
Next up is Lucinda Wallace, Senior VP, Waterloo EDC. Welcome, Lucinda. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Chair Foxton, members of Regional Council and staff. I am Lucinda Wallace, Senior Vice President at Waterloo Region Economic Development Corporation. We're known as Waterloo EDC. We are the investment promotion agency responsible for helping local companies in collaboration with our municipal ECDEV partners, helping local companies expand and grow like Conestoga Meats, as well as attracting new businesses to our region. Waterloo EDC itself is located in Kitchener, but I personally am a very proud resident of Woolwich Township. Waterloo EDC strongly recommends and supports the approval of the conditional permit to remove and relocate the woodlot as outlined in option 1 on the report before you this afternoon. The conditional approval, as Arnold mentioned, is the first step in a multi-step, multi-year significant expansion of Conestoga Meats and has the potential to deliver hundreds of millions of dollars in investment and construction, along with hundreds of new, well-paid jobs for our community. Conestoga Meats has been a strong and committed local anchor company in Waterloo Region for 40-plus years. Owned by a cooperative of Southwestern Ontario farmers, they have expanded multiple times over the last 20 years at their current location. During this time, they've expanded, as Arnold mentioned, from 100 to 1,400 with hopeful plans to get to 2,000. All good-paying, full-time jobs for our local residents and also our immigrants. They are now one of the largest pork producers in Ontario and one of Waterloo Region's largest food processors. The company has proven itself to be an excellent corporate citizen throughout its tenure, which is one of the reasons our provincial and federal governments have supported Conestoga Meats' previous expansions. Waterloo EDC has been proud as well to support their recent expansions. The site of the company's current facility and the new facility that's being pondered is part of our Ontario Municipal Board-approved employment lands, known as the Eastside Lands. These lands are designated for employment uses through our regional official plan. As good corporate citizen, the company plans to move and significantly enlarge the overall woodlot feature, resulting in more than 3 times the current woodlot area. We believe this type of woodland relocation and remediation is appropriate development for use of these designated employment lands. The conditional approval of this permit will allow regional staff, Conestoga Meats, and other stakeholders to continue to work on an appropriate plan for what could be a hugely significant new manufacturing state-of-the-art facility in our community. This new facility, as we said, would deliver hundreds of millions in local construction costs and create hundreds of new good-paying jobs, while continuing to solidify Conestoga Meats as an anchor employer in our community for the future and enabling them to remain globally competitive. Our community knows firsthand the challenges and hardships that arise when a large local anchor company decides to leave Waterloo Region to relocate and grow in another municipality. Waterloo EDC has and continues to work with local companies that want to grow and expand within our community and are finding it difficult to find suitable shovel-ready land. For our future, it's critical that we work together on solutions to allow our local companies to continue to grow and succeed in our community. In summary, Conestoga Meats has proven to be a committed employer of Waterloo Region for 40+ years and has a proven track record of successful expansion and growth. The company continues to demonstrate a genuine willingness and passion to work with all levels of government to find mutually agreeable solutions. This project supports our farmers. It supports our local agricultural industry, will have significant impact to our community, and create good-paying full-time jobs. The proposed development and potential new facility is located in our designated employment lands on the east side lands, and the compensation plan for the woodlot is over 3 times the current acreage. For all these reasons, Waterloo EDC strongly recommends that Conestoga Meats Woodland Relocation Conditional Permit is approved by the Licensing and Hearings Committee today. Thank you.
Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So WEDC is in the business of bringing businesses to Waterloo Region. What would it mean to bring in a business that employed 1,400 people?
It would be those, we call those big whales, those big anchors. To get something like that, you're talking, once in a generation, once in a 20-year, in order to attract something like that. Again, one of Tony's famous sayings is, you never walk by an old friend to greet a new one. And I think it behooves all of us to make sure we continue to have committed local anchor companies like Conestoga Meats in our community.
Thank you.
That looks like all the questions, so thank you, Lucinda.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Greg Chalenko, Treasurer, Grand River Environmental Network. Welcome, Greg.
I love the region of Waterloo, and I've served a number of advisory committees. I'd plead for another couple of minutes. I'm suffering from Fuchs's epithelial corneal dystrophy. I only heard of this a few days ago, and I had to read 170 pages with this device. I'll be getting a corneal transplant soon. My background is I am retired from teaching in environmental studies at the University of Waterloo. I taught courses in ecology, in environmental assessment. I helped the Niagara Escarpment Commission and the World Biosphere Reserve start a novel course that has now got international acclaim in forest biodiversity management. And we had a number of sites. We went out there every 5 years. We measured every tree and shrub and so forth. And that gave us a deep understanding of forests and how they function and what they contribute to our atmosphere, to our economy, and to the planet Earth. I've also served for 10 years on the Ecological and Environmental Advisory Committee of the region of Waterloo. We looked at, in those 10 years, probably over 120 different proposals that would have affected designated natural areas. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and what I really loved was to see how we all grew and learned to respect one another and to be more professional and to apply science as it should have. Those would be corporations, it could be the regional officials and politicians, as well as myself. I also taught a course at the University of Waterloo for first-year students where we took a messy environmental problem, they had to become either politicians or advocates of something or business managers and government officials and so on, and forced them into a situation of mock environmental assessment so that they could come out of it respecting how complicated these decisions are and how we needed to work together for our mutual benefit. The Grand River Environmental Network had a wonderful surprise a few months ago when the Air Farmers Mutual Insurance Company let us know, I was the treasurer, so they came to me, that they provide scholarships for the children of policyholders who are going into university each year, and they also provide each year to differing organizations charitable donations. And this year they engaged these young folk who had received the scholarships to decide on who should receive the other one, and that the charitable donation, and that was us. And so the Grand River Environmental Network executive decided we've got to take that in trust and spirit. This is money from the agricultural community, farmers and the communities with all their sensibilities, and make sure that our work respects that as well as respects other parties that engaged in these matters. You can't just replace a forest. Several speakers said that it's being moved. No, it would be destroyed. It's a very difficult thing to try and replicate it. There were attempts in the US up to 30, 40 years ago to put in legislation that would allow companies or highway construction and so on to go over a marsh or some other area and compensate it, supposedly compensate in quotation marks, by creating something else. It doesn't work very often at all. It's very difficult to do. This woodlot is significant woodlot by the regional's plan and a core environmental feature, and there's 3 wetlands in it. It's doing good work. I should also mention that I've belonged to a cooperative since I was 7 years old, and I respect the novel industrial configurations greatly. I think that this is this meat company, I admire it, and I sense that they're trying to do the very best. They just don't quite know how, and we haven't been given enough time. I've proposed that the decision on this be put off for another 2 months. I would like personally to do some more investigations, have my operation, and see better, and to, in good faith, propose how we can work around this matter. I also sit on the Rare Land Trust, and it takes donations of significant natural areas. There's always the possibility of Conestoga Meats becoming a champion of wonderful new enterprises that get the ecology right, they get their business right, they are dedicated to the public as well.
Greg,
I love bacon.
Greg, excuse
Okay,
me,
and
your
the very
time is
ending
up.
of this is this
Wrap
needs
up,
to be
please.
postponed
Yes, just wrap up, thank you.
for another couple of months.
Greg, excuse me, there's a question for you, Councillor Hunick.
Hi, Greg. Thank you very much for your intelligent delegation and for noting the difference between relocating a forest, which sounds a lot nicer than destroying it, which is what we would be doing. And thank you very much for offering your services and support to make this better. If you want to talk a little bit more about what that could look like, we would be glad to hear it.
Okay, if I think we need a deeper examination. I think on a proven ecological basis, it's extremely difficult to compensate for that forest. I do believe it is possible to work around it and let it continue growing, absorbing carbon dioxide, providing trails for people to go into it and students to learn things. And also, I must admit I've got another problem right now, and that is the matter of the expropriation has poisoned the trust of the public with the region of Waterloo, which I have served for so many years and with such dedication and respect. In the office here, it says, "We inspire by conducting ourselves with openness to engage public trust and confidence." And I want the region to have the ability to heal this present situation, and then in a couple of months or 3 months' time, we can accomplish something that will leave us in harmony and restore the region and the trust between all the different parties that we need to have.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your mentorship of the community and for your persistence in this. We appreciate your comments today. Thanks.
Councillor Nowak.
Greg, I don't know if you remember, but I remember you on the EAC committee for
Yes,
about 8 years.
and I remember you too.
Oh, good. I must have made an impression of some sort. Anyway, the question, I've asked this to others, and I'm sure you're the expert in the field. We're talking about a 3-to-1 plantation, 120 acres to 35 acres. Those are going to be new trees that are going to be planted throughout the property. In your estimation, and maybe this is part of the research that you're going to be doing, how many years will it take for those trees to produce the same benefits that exist in the forest right now, as far as sequestration and all those things, if possible?
They could produce some benefits in terms of carbon absorption and sort of recreational benefits and so on, but they can't match our complicated, native, ecologically attuned Maple Beach forest with all its diversity of things. And in reading this report, I didn't think that there'd be that many interesting birds in it, and especially a red-tailed hawk nest and those other things. Hawks aren't going to choose it as a nursery.
Yeah. So basically, it's almost impossible to replicate, I would think. Is that a fair assessment?
That's true. And with there being 400 acres there, I would urge the company to leave this forest and love it and make a point that they, unusually for corporate culture, have accomplished something like that, are still operating through reconfiguring things, and there's some land left over to do other work and to nurture it and try and replicate some other kind of ecological communities.
Okay.
Councillor Shantz.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a question, because I don't know the answer. What is the effect of putting a large building adjacent to a woodlot like that? Well, so say they had a configuration that allowed the woodlot to stay or part of it. How would building a plant right next to it affect the woodlot?
You would usually have a buffer of maybe 15 meters minimum, often a little bit more. It would be planted appropriately with the delicacies of the design would have to wait till for further studies. There'd be the building itself could be designed so that it fits in an interesting way. The windows, you can put stripes on it that are invisible to the human eye, but birds can see, and so they won't go flying into the windows and breaking their necks. It could be done.
Thank you. I don't see any more speakers, so thank you very much. Next up, we have Charles Rose from Woolwich. You have 5 minutes, Charles.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to address this committee. Is the slide coming up? The photos that are on slide 1 were all taken on our property. We live in Breslau on a private and well-treed small acreage that we enjoy and share with our pet boarding and grooming business. Until Conestoga Meat's recent purchase of 755 Lonsdale Road, they were a nearby neighbor. They now border us on our north and east property lines, and because of that, we have concerns regarding the proposed woodlot removal. Next slide. Our property is seen in the pink outlined areas on the aerial photo and in the proposed site plan for the new slaughterhouse. Our property is the only remaining private residence not owned by Conestoga Meats on Lonsdale Road. As you can see in the aerial photo, we are a short distance from the woodland. As part of their woodland relocation plan, the north end of our property will abut part of the newly planted sapling forest shown in the grade crosshatch patterns on the site plan. It should be noted that the phrase woodland relocation is a misnomer. The proposal includes the full destruction of a century woodlot habitat, as well as planting new forests that will take decades under management to mature and develop. Next slide, please. We have concerns regarding wildlife. Where will the wildlife go and how will they be protected during the deforestation? Will their forced relocation bring them to our property? The newly planted saplings won't provide a new habitat. Including in the application is an environmental study of the woodland that confirms a breeding ground for red-tailed hawks and the presence of coyotes. The green arrows on the slide shows shows the directional movement of wildlife to and from the woodland and how it relates to our property. As our business provides care services for small breed dogs, some only 2 or 3 pounds, we have concerns about an increase of predatory wildlife and the impact that this will have on our business. Safety is a key factor in pet care. It should be noted that this environmental survey concluded that further surveys are recommended prior to the woodland removal. Next slide, please. Our property is among the lowest elevation of the entire area, including that of the woodland in question. In the 10 years that we've lived there, we didn't experience any flooding until Conestoga's last expansion. Since then, during significant rainstorms, their storm water management pond exceeds its limit and dumps into the Randall Drain, which then dumps directly onto our property, sometimes right up and over the road in our driveway. We've experienced some erosion to the driveway as well as at the base of our septic mound. We are concerned about increased flooding if the 35-acre woodlot is removed. Without the woodlot absorbing the water, it will naturally flow to the Randall Drain, potentially severely flooding our already flooding property. As the Randall Drain runs through part of our property, we have been responsible for costs associated with its maintenance. Will we be responsible for additional costs of maintenance when the drain is further overwhelmed with the newly displaced ground and stormwater? I see plans for a new stormwater pond. Will it be installed before the woodland is removed? What assurances are there that it won't overwhelm the drain as does the existing pond? Next slide, please. It's proposed that a conservation easement be placed over the newly planting sapling forests in favor of the region of Waterloo, such that no development is permitted or change in use allowed. This proposal will clearly change the status of our property in order to accommodate the regrowth plan. The existing GRC setback on our property along the Randall Drain side is 30 meters. The proposed site plan shows a new GRC protected area completely enveloping our entire property and therefore severely limiting use of our north acre and negatively impacting our property value.
Your last minute, you have 1 minute left.
Thank you. To conclude, may I offer the following suggestions. Please consider the recommendation to conduct further environmental assessments. Knowing the full impact on the environment is critical for planning mitigation. Consult with neighboring property owners directly to understand and assess their concerns regarding possible impacts of the deforestation. Review alternate development plans that would retain and protect the woodland. Knowing that a woodland removal is a serious environment concern, Conestoga must surely have alternate plans that will allow them to coexist with this century woodland habitat. Finally, there are issues of impact that need to be addressed, alternate plans to review to ensure that full due diligence has been completed on behalf of the public prior to issuing the permit. So for these reasons, I urge the committee to choose option 2, decline the permit application at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Heinrich.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for your delegation and for noting the importance that what's good for one business in the region, no matter how big or how small, is not necessarily good for another business in the region. And we need to consider all of these dynamics and factors. Thanks.
Thank
I see no other questions, so thank you very much for coming up.
Thank you.
Charles, next we have Shane Mulligan, and Shane is online.
Good afternoon.
Welcome,
Hi,
Shane.
and thank you. I would like to share my screen, if I may, to share some images. Can I just do that from my home? Is that the process?
Yes, you may. Go ahead.
Okay. Not actually. There it is. There it is. Thanks. I'm sharing here an image I came across, and when I heard about this this proposed development and request, this image came to mind. This is a map from a book by Oliver Rackham. It's the history of the English countryside, and the map shows here. You can see the outline of a woodland called Chockney Woods, and this is a picture from 1598, or a map, and here next to it we have a map from 1896. You can see, as he notes, the image is identical. And if you look at a map from today, this is Chockney Woods today, and the outline remains virtually unchanged since 1598. This is so this ancient woodland, it's about 63 hectares, and other records show it's existed as a woodland for approximately 1,000 years, and quite likely longer. It's about 13 kilometers from the city of Colchester, which is 130,000 persons, and about 70 kilometers from the capital city, London. Of course, England, like Canada, was once entirely covered in forest virtually, and there's been development here for several thousand years, really. And when I look at this image, I'm just impressed that for at least the last 500 years, this woodland has been maintained in a relatively undisturbed form. Obviously, it's been used, it's been hiked through, coppiced, and harvested selectively over the time, but throughout it's remained a woodland. So when I look at our region, I see an area that's been settled and set to European-style land clearance for about 200 years. And I'm really happy that we have a woodland conservation bylaw. I think it indicates our recognition of the value and need to maintain these woodlands that we still have, but it also notes that they're rare enough that we need to have laws in place to protect them. And like the English forest, our woodlands are ancient. This is in the books for 1,000 years, but it's quite possible that the woodland we're talking about today has been relatively undisturbed since the Ice Age, and has been evolving as a community, as an ecology for 10,000 years. So when I hear proposals discussing 20-year horizons and 50-year time horizons, it just strikes me as completely inadequate to address the complexity of the ecology that we're talking about removing. and the value that's in that, the soils, the organic matter, the mycorrhizal networks, the seed banks and genetic material that has been sustained and maintained in this special space. So I appreciate Conestoga Meats has a strong case and has put a lot of thought into design and even some of the remedial proposals, the relocation of some of the plant material, and even of some of the soil may well have some significant ecological benefits. But I also hear throughout today's presentations talks of the expansions and the continuous expansion of Conestoga Meats over the last few decades, this obviously being a significant expansion, but where do we go from here? And what is to protect this proposed 112 or 120 acre replacement forest, as it's perhaps considered? And what happens in 40 or 50 years when Conestoga Meats wants to expand further? Do we have a mechanism in place? Do we have the foresight, the policy tools to protect that land into that space, so that when we look at the map of Waterloo region in 500 years, we can still recognize our ancient woodlands that we've managed to protect for that long from all the pressures of development that we're placing on them.
Shane, can you wrap up? You're out of time. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I've heard lots of good suggestions, and I think maybe one of them does suggest that we could postpone a decision on this until considering in more detail that remedial plan. So thanks for listening.
I don't see any questions, so thank you, Shane. Next up, we have Mo Markham, Waterloo Region Climate Initiative. She's also online. Is she there?
Yes.
So go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me. I'm Mo Markham with Waterloo Region Climate Initiatives, and I'm here to ask you to refuse Conestoga Meatpackers' request to cut down a significant woodlot. I would agree with others that a woodlot cannot be relocated. Animal agriculture destroys forests and marshes and natural grasslands all over the planet every day. And these are very difficult, if not impossible, to recover. And they cannot be recovered while we're continuing to expand animal agriculture. Our group believes that it would be wrong to further destroy a forest for the sake of expanding a business that is already forest destroying and greenhouse gas emitting. We don't want to talk about that because we don't want to change, but it's a conversation that's necessary to our future. I also wonder where these animals who are displaced will go. And will they survive? Certainly their ecosystem, which is many years in the development, will be destroyed. I think we're all also aware that replacing trees is never as efficient or as good for us or other animals and birds as leaving them be. Deforestation is a huge issue in our world. Poor and Nemesek researchers at the University of Oxford have found that if everyone adopted a plant-based diet, global farmland use would be reduced by 75%, the size of the United States, China, Australia, and the European Union combined. If our protein needs were met with alternative proteins, deforestation would fall by over 80%. Sorry, over 90%. If we stop deforestation and increase reforestation, we could go a long way to achieving the climate mitigation needed to survive as a species. And I think this has to be part of the conversation that we have. I'm aware that not everyone is going to go overnight, but I believe that the region has a commitment to the people here to preserve what land we can and not allow the meat industry to destroy more wild places if we can help it. The Oxford Foods looked at data from nearly 40,000 farms across the world over 5 years and has stated very clearly that there is no time left for animal agriculture. And part of that is deforestation, which is what we're talking about today, further deforestation. Since animals eat many times their body weight in food before they become food, they are not producing food but consuming it. and animal agriculture is implicated in deforestation around the world for this reason, because of the crops, et cetera, that are raised to feed these animals. Even where deforestation has already happened, animal agriculture prevents us from rewilding and from sequestering carbon. Oxford University also says that most of the GHG emissions, and most scientists will say this, the United Nations Environmental Committee, et cetera, GHG emissions are not mainly from travel, but from the animals themselves. Travel is a very tiny part of their emissions. Deforestation has implications for the sinking of carbon and for the biodiversity because of loss of habitat and fragmentation of habitat. Deforestation and fragmentation of habitat is what's being proposed here. A Weizmann Institute study found that about half of the Earth's animal species are thought to have been lost in the last 50 years or so. If we look at the biomass of mammals on the planet, more than 60% are livestock, mostly cattle and pigs, and about 36% are human. Just 40% are still wild. And that's who we need to think about right now. The World Economic Forum says that agriculture and aquaculture threaten more than 50% of the remaining 42,000 species currently at risk of extinction.
Mo, you're
Yes?
down to your last 46 seconds.
Thank you.
44 seconds.
Habitat loss and fragmentation are currently the main threats to terrestrial biodiversity. Anthropogenic disturbance such as agriculture expansion has resulted in dramatic global habitat loss and fragmentation. In addition, farmed animals like pigs are a non-native species introduced by settlers to Canada. This is not a cycle of life at all. And my group believes that this proposal should be turned down for the sake of the biodiversity of animals, trees, and absolutely for our future. It's not a conversation we want to have, but in order for it to have a future, we need to stop this industry and we need to stop expanding it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mo, and I don't see any questions, so thank you very much. Members of the council, are there any final questions or remarks? Seeing none, I am going to ask that Chair Redmond take the chair so I may step down to provide a motion. Chair Redmond, please.
It's called making an entrance. So, Councillor Foxton, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I believe this is a major issue. I recognize the length of time and the beauty of this forest. I also recognize the need for growth and development and to support a great company. This is not an easy issue. It's not just the forest, it's the endangered species in the forest, but in our economy and the supplying of jobs. My motion is going to be, and I will read it now. Be it resolved that the Licensing and Hearing Committee refers the woodland removal permit application for Conestoga Meats to the September 25th, 2024 council meeting for further consideration, and that the delegates who appeared before the Licensing Hearing Committee at the August 28th, 2024 meeting be permitted to delegate again to council. This is such an important issue. I feel that all of council should hear the facts and be a part of the discussion. I don't think any of us want to take this lightly, and several of us have concerns and in both ways. So I think that this has to come to the larger council. Could I get a seconder?
Well, thank you. I'll chair now. Thank you, Councillor Foxton. Councillor Hunick, you're prepared to second that motion? So this is a motion to refer to all of council on September the 25th And just to reiterate, all delegations who appeared today are welcome to come back to delegate again. And it will give the rest of our council colleagues time to get up to speed, because we've all read this several times, but not all of council who aren't members of this committee will be as familiar with the topics. Any speakers? Okay, I'm going to call the motion. It's been moved and seconded that this matter be referred to September the 25th to council. Please use your e-scribe to vote. So colleagues, that is carried, and this again will come back to council on September the 25th, and I will now try not to knock the flag over when I vacate the chair.
I want to thank everyone that came today. It's an important issue, and thank you very much.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Councilor
My
Erb, go ahead.
e-drive didn't show up, and I just want the clerk to be aware that I voted, or I'm in favor of the deferral.
Oh, thank you very much. You were so noted. Thank you very much. So next is report PDL-CPL 24-016. Oh, no, that's Councilor Meats. Once that's done, we are on, right there. We are on number PDL-CPL-24-014, woodlot removal permit 3413 Herbs Road West. Our next report today is to look at the woodlot removal permit for the 3413 Herbs Road West. Rod Regier, you have the floor again to introduce the permit, please.
Through the chair. So this is a permit for Richard Steinman as requested in the package there. And this is a woodland removal permit for approximately 3.8 hectares of a conifer plantation. And staff are recommending approval of this permit.
So, you're done presenting, that's it? Yeah. Any questions? I don't see any questions now. Oh, Councilor Noah, you're not on? Okay. Okay, go ahead, Councilor Noah.
It didn't work again. No, I think that this one in particular is one that I would support for sure. I mean, the question is, he planted these, I think it was the owner that planted these trees 40 years ago, if I recall. But there's been no monitoring of those trees over that period of time, or has there?
Through the chair. No monitoring or management, just the plantation at the original time, and then what we're aware of now is a plantation that has not shown any signs of natural succession or progression to a native woodland feature.
Yeah, it makes, and I maybe shouldn't relate the two different reports, but I can't help but doing that. If you look at the previous report, they were talking about 160 one-acre plots of trees that they were going to plant. You know, how would we monitor something on that magnitude? Or probably wouldn't, I guess. They would just, and then I'm assuming they could apply for a permit to cut them down as well. That's rhetorical, I think, more than anything else.
Councilor Hunick.
In other words, I'm questioning the value of those 157 acres of small plantations and what value they would really have. Okay, so that's a separate issue, and I digress.
Councilor Hunick.
similar to what Councillor Nowak has just noted, the reports for this committee are relatively similar in nature. And so I just want to clarify that in this second report that we're dealing with today, we are talking about the forest that is primarily dead and diseased now because of lack of monitoring. Is that correct?
Through the chair, this conifer plantation, while still alive, we are seeing the presence of diseased trees. We aren't seeing any natural regeneration of native species there. It is primarily just a pine plantation with no understory vegetation.
Thank you. And I think in light of that, I just want to point out the difference between approving of the leveling of a forest that's not doing well versus a fully functioning ecosystem. And so for that reason, I'm in support of this.
I don't see any other speakers. Would you wish for me to read the motion? I need a mover and a seconder first. Moved by Councillor Nowak, seconded by Councillor Unick. That the regional municipality of Waterloo issue a woodland removal permit to Richard Steinman as requested in Appendix A for the removal of approximately 3.8 hectares of coniferous plantation located at 3413 Herbst Road West as outlined in Route PDL-CPL-24-14 dated August 28, 2024. Please use your e-scribe to vote with the exception. And Councillor Nowak is a yes. And so is Councillor Erb, and as I am I.
Where are we saying?
It was the real going here. It was yesterday or the day before. I have checked my thing with both the something with Anderson.
There's some background noise coming from something.
And that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Next, we are on 5.3 PDL-CPL-24-015 Woodland Removal Permit 51 Mooresfield Street, Cambridge, PDL-CPL-24-015. Our last report today is to look at the woodlot removal permit for 51 Moorefield Street in Cambridge. Rod Regier, you have the floor again, or your staff.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Megan to give us a brief overview of the application.
Thank you, and through the chair. So this is for a woodland removal permit at 51 Moorefield Road in Cambridge. This is also a small conifer plantation, approximately 1 hectare in size. Here, as we previously discussed, this is also similar in that we have a pine plantation with no evidence of natural regeneration or a return to a more naturalized native species composition. So I am available to answer any questions. We also do have a representative of the applicant here as well who can speak to council.
I don't see any question. Councillor Nowak, go ahead.
Is it within the city limits?
It is within the city of Cambridge, yes.
Oh, it's in the limits, okay. I'm just curious about that.
Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair. I read in this report that a lot of the damage in this forest is caused by human interaction. And so this may be beyond the scope of this report, but I'm just wondering what actions the region takes to prevent human destruction of natural habitat.
So through the implementation of the Woodland Conservation Bylaw and the General Tree Bylaw, we do have provisions in there for contravention of the bylaw, such that if trees are removed, we can issue a bylaw infraction. There are also area municipal bylaws, so the City of Cambridge would have a bylaw as well to prevent damage. In this case, it's challenging because it's on private property, so we would need something to be reported. So it would be through our bylaw officers who would be monitoring the site to see if any significant damage and if any bylaw infraction could be found there.
I realize that it's too little too late in the circumstance, but I wonder what could be done to beef those incentives or penalties up a bit more to make sure that our natural habitat that remain don't succumb to human problems. Thanks.
Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Chair Redmond and Councillor Nowak. And I will now read the motion that the Region of Waterloo issue a woodland removal permit to Donald Medeiros as requested in Appendix A for the removal of approximately 1 hectare of conifer plantation located at 51 Moorfield Street, Cambridge, as outlined in Report PDL-CPL-24-15 dated August 28, 2024. Please use your e-scribes to vote if you're able to. So that's carried. Thank you very much. And now, other business. Taxi bylaw, I believe that the chair is going to be, Tom's going to take the chair. Go ahead, Tom. Verbal update.
Thank you, Chair Fox, and I'll be very brief about this. On the results side, we implemented an incentive program for accessible taxi drivers back in February. At that time, we had about 16 or 17 accessible vehicles on the road. We now have about 24. So we've been able to bring that up. And I had suggested that an overhaul of the bylaw is probably in order at this time, since it's been about 8 years since we last looked at it. And to be as expedient as possible, I believe that Councillor Hunick has a motion to put forward which kind of addresses that overall package of reviewing the bylaw and some of the components in it being the accessibility package. And so it's not really an update on my part, but I think it's a very constructive way to put it forward so that we can take it forward and give it a time frame and then come back to this committee with the results. So by way of update, that's pretty much all I would have.
Thank you. Councillor Hunick, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Foxton and Mr. Hoodison. I have been providing various and plentiful recommendations to Mr. Hoodison for a year and a half, and some of those have come to fruition, and some of those have been very difficult. But in the interim, I attended a conference in Calgary and was highly impressed with their accessible taxi service and the timelines that were provided by them. And so, in light of that, the motion coming to all council tonight will be to see about implementing similar services in Waterloo Region, what that would take, what would be possible there. And so that's where this is coming from. So thanks.
Chair Redmond.
Thank you. I'm interested. You said that accessible cabs went from 16 to 25. How do you account for that increase? Because I know that's been a struggle for a long time.
Yes, through the chair, we changed our incentive program to start supporting them with the cost of the vehicles because they're so much more expensive. And by doing that, more drivers became interested in undertaking that. And so we now have beyond our 7% number in the bylaw of accessible taxis on the road. And I think the question now is to how best utilize them. How do we make them meet the demand or the requirement that the accessible community has? Because we seem to have more on the road. Now, how do we make that effective to providing the service that's required?
Thank you very much. I think that's encouraging. And I think the accessibility and the ability to access those cabs in a timely way is really at the heart of a lot of Councillor Hunick's motions, and I support them.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chantal.
Thank you, Chair Broxton. In light of what Councillor Chair Redmond has just shared, I do want to acknowledge that the rise in taxis, I mean, we have a ways to go in terms of equitable, accessible transit in the region, but it is making a major difference. So, like, the positive outcomes are being seen already and could be better. Yeah, good. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, correspondence. You'll note that 2 items were received for correspondence. Oh, I'm sorry. Verbal update, 2025 meeting schedule. And this is from, who's doing the update? Tom, go ahead. The meeting schedule for 2025?
Thanks, sorry, Chair. We just wanted to have a general conversation right now with committee to see if they wanted to stick with the quarterly schedule for the licensing committee that we have done in the past. If everyone's good with that, then clerks will put out that schedule accordingly for 2025. And the next meeting we would have scheduled for this would be Wednesday, November 13th, if everyone's good with that.
So I got a thumbs up from Joe and Chair Redmond, and Councillor Honig, you're up, okay, and so that's a go. Thank you. All right, so again, we've got those two pieces of correspondence. Our next meeting is November 13th at 2:30 p.m. And can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Councillor Unick, Councillor Nowak, please use your e-scribe to vote, and if you can't, raise your hand. That's 4. I'm 4. And that's carried. Thank you very much, everyone, and good timing. Thank you.